Welcome to class 3. It seems like a lot of people have been working hard this week, been answering some questions, so it's been good. We're talking about strings and arrays. So it's chapter 7 and 8, strings and arrays. And then I will have plenty of time for demo. I took some of your guys' questions, and I think I came up with examples that will highlight some of those concerns. These are the things that by the end of this lecture we have at least talked about, and then in the live coding I'll go over more. But the keywords, common string methods, and I put a whole bunch of those out there, but you also need to know the common array methods as well that I did not put in there. But you also need to be able to create, access, and modify arrays, convert between strings and arrays, and then explain what mutable and immutable mean. So those are common vocabulary words that are used and thrown around. Those are the ones that you do have to know. Okay. So chapter 7, we're going to start with strings. And again, I'm going to not go super fast, but I'm going to go fast through this so that I have more time for the live coding. And then during the live coding, I'll definitely be checking some questions. And then I'm getting you out of here by 7, just because I think the studio has been running long, but I'm taking some of the blame because I've been running long. So chapter 7, some big takeaways here. Strings are a collection. They're a collection of characters, and that's how the computer kind of analyzes them. Since strings are a collection, they come with special methods. And then because they're also objects, they come with other methods, such as you can use bracket notation, just like you use on collections. You can use indices in those bracket notations to figure out which index character you want. You can find out the length. You can do things like making them lowercase, uppercase. You can find the index of a certain character or set of characters. You can trim it, so if there's white space on the beginning or end, you can trim that down. You can also replace certain either characters or certain phrases in there with other ones. And then you can slice, which is like cut. There are some object methods and properties that we're going to talk about, like what is a method, what is a property. And then there's this thing, I don't know if whenever you've messed with this, it would print out undefined. So whenever it says undefined, that just means that it can't actually define what you want. And then definitely template literals. Those are super helpful whenever you're trying to print out things. So we need to know how to do that. So just real quick, like I said, we're going to go over this quick basics just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Whenever I say let word equals JavaScript here, remember that indices start at 0. When you do like block coding, if you've done any of those intros, sometimes they'll start at 1 because it makes sense. It's the first character. But computers, almost everything we do in the computer language actually starts with 0. So this is the capital J would be at space or at index 0, and then you just count on up. So if we were saying, print out word 1, word is JavaScript as a whole, as a collection of characters, and we're saying print out the character in spot 1, so that would be A. If I did word length -2, so somebody was asking, well, word length, if I actually count how many are here, there's actually 10 characters here. Even though 9's the highest number here, there's 10. So I'm going to do 10 -2. So that means I'm going to do the same thing as if I said word bracket 8. Well, word bracket 8 is that P right there. So this would be P. Now, some people did say it kind of makes sense then, because if you just think about the minus and then the number being how many spaces back from the end, that's probably perfect. This would be -1, this would be -2, the 8 would be -2, then the 7 would be -3. So you're right. If you do length minus and then whatever the number is, that's how many you count backwards. But the computer does not do that. The computer actually does the calculation, finds the 8, knows that the P is 8. Word length, again, if it's just talking about the length, that's 10. There's 10 characters there. And then if you did Word and Word.length, this is what's unique to different languages. Different languages handle this different, such as I'm a Java developer. So whenever I look at this, it makes me cringe because this will actually throw an error in Java. It's called an out of bounds error. So this would not let my program even run once it hit this spot. But JavaScript is much more lightweight. It's like, oh, you probably made a mistake, but we're just going to keep on running your program. And what it would actually print out is that undefined. So it's going to say that it's undefined because if you go to number 10 over here off to the end, there is nothing. So it's just undefined. But unfortunately, it does not throw an error. So when you are doing these things, it's sometimes actually harder to debug because you're like, I think it's giving me something, but it just doesn't return what I think it should, but yet it's not throwing an error either. So just know some of those oddities happen in JavaScript because it's not as a strict language as some other ones. Some key things. Here's the methods. I just copied and pasted this out of the book, but I did want to go over these just very briefly. If you notice on all of these string ones, the description says returns, 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 etc. I'm going to highlight this all these many times because this is when we talk about immutable versus mutable. So whenever you are applying these methods to a string, it does not actually change the string. What it does is it does its little calculation and it returns what you want, but it doesn't modify the original string. So if you want to save something, you actually have to say like a different variable or the same variable. You can overwrite that variable, but you have to tell it where is it going to save it at because it does not save this unless if you tell it to. It does not modify the original one. So if I did to uppercase, it will give me the uppercase temporarily, and either I have to print it out by doing console log or say some variable name equals this thing here, and then it'll save it to that variable, but it's not going to change the original string. Right. I try to do this diagram. I am not good at these, but we'll walk through this. So the way and also, you guys are not at the state for me to throw too much vocabulary at you, so I'm trying to use basic vocabulary. This long-term memory is not what I would use if I was teaching like a college level class that's already had computer science. But I think for us right now, this is how I would think about it. So those of you that have had some computer science understanding know that this is not technical jargon. This is just teaching. So your computer stores in its memory, and it has two different types of memory as it goes through. It has more of a long-term holding memory that it keeps and saves a lot of things over and over, no matter what program or what file you're doing. It kind of can save some things. And then there's also things that your processor needs to actually function and what your processor is doing. And then once your processor does something, it uses this working memory to kind of save what it needs at the very short time, just this working memory as it works through it. But then after it gets done with whatever it's doing in the working memory, it either has to save it to the long-term memory or it just gets rid of it because the CPU, the processor on your computer, doesn't care about memory. It just does whatever it's told. So this memory management thing is a common issue that people have to worry about whenever they're doing anything in computer science. So I'm going to walk through this story, this diagram. So let's say that I set a string called name. This is my variable name, and I set it equal to Philip Hodges. So if we go down here, these are the operations I'm going to do. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type in my console name bracket 7. And I'm going to say, make it a dash. And so if you looked and counted, what I'm trying to do by that is maybe put a dash right in the middle there. But you can't do that because if you just set number 7, strings can't be modified. You can't edit or modify strings as we do there. So I'm like, yeah, I got bored with that. What I want to do now is let's go ahead and do this name.split is the best. Now, the reason I can do all of this stuff on the right-hand side is because afterwards, I'm going to resave it back to name. So I'm going to make a copy of Philippagus. The first thing I'm going to do is split it by any spaces. This is a space. So it looks through the spaces. It looks through the spaces and sees, oh, there's a space right there. So it splits it. It actually takes this in the working memory, and I wish I could type a little bit more. That's why we're going to do live coding. And it splits this into two different sections over in this working memory part. It switches it, splits it into two. And then I said, okay, so once you split it by all the spaces, which in this case, there's only one space that splits it in half, I say grab the 0 element. So remember, if we do indices, this one is index 0 and this one's index 1, because I only have 2 elements there. And so I said, grab the first one. So I'm grabbing Philip there, and then I'm going to add to it, space is the best. And then I'm going to replace the variable. So that's where this arrow goes down. So I work on it over here. I eventually get what I want. I modify whatever I want to temporarily. And then what I do is by doing the equals name, it resaves it. It replaces what I had before, which is Philippagus, into Philip is the best. I don't have it here. And then this part over here on the right is actually this last one. When I do name to uppercase, in working memory, I would be able to see it. So if I did console log this, I could see the all uppercase. But if I went back to my string, my original string, and just printed out my string, it would still be lowercase, because it works on it temporarily until you get done with that process, and then it does not save it unless you tell it to. So hopefully that's a little bit better understanding. They do talk about some intro to computer science topics. They don't call them that, but it's not really needed for what we're doing in this class. But definitely, if you go into more depth of computer science stuff, CPUs, they can only understand ones or zeros. So everything that we do, what's even crazy to me is even me talking, this recording gets saved into the hard drive as ones and zeros. So audio, video, all that kind of stuff is actually getting saved in my hard drive as ones and zeros. That's why video files are so big, because they have to take care of the audio, the video, every single pixel on the screen, every single modification of the audio. They have to save that all, so it becomes a very big file because they're converting it all to ones and zeros. Most computers nowadays actually do it in series of bytes, and so I'm being very simplistic here. There are more explanations, but 8 binary bits. So the bits are the zeros and ones. If you put them in groups of 8, then what we can do is we can cut them in half, and 4 binary bits can be 1 hexadecimal. And then what they do is they combine those. So instead of storing 8 characters visibly, they actually convert it to 2 characters so that it actually gets converted a little bit faster during processing. Again, you don't need to know this stuff for what we are doing. I'm just going over some computer science topics. And then for the collection of characters, like strings, they use this ASCII table. And that's because if I typed in a T, who's to know that it's a T? So they've come up with like common bytes that mean certain things. So if I say that it's a character, and it's a character with byte 132, then everybody knows what that means because they can go look it up on a table. So you don't need to memorize the table. There's tons of tables out there. You just need to know that there are common languages and common themes when doing processing on computer programs that people have come up with. So you need to hear about them and be able to Google them and know that they're a table and a common thing, but you don't need to memorize any of that. The book calls them special characters. I've always heard them as escape characters, because this backslash, I can never remember the difference between backslash and forward slash, but whatever one that one is, it is an escape And then the thing after it is special. So I can understand why they say special characters. So if you /n in a string, that means to do a new line. A /t means to do a tab. And then a /u, yeah, I thought it was a backslash. I'm just not confident all the time. So the /u with those numbers, you can actually go look up the table. So I actually looked up this one. And if you do u and then 00A9, it'll actually print out the copyright sign. So you can look those up. There's just tables everywhere that you can look those up. Template literals. They use the backticks. This is a very common mistake that I see. Those look like single quotes, but they're not. They're backticks. So on an, I'm going to say normal computer, it's like the very top left above the tab. It's a backtick. It's not the single quote. And then inside, what's really cool about the template literals is you can type just like you want to, and then when you want to throw a variable or even like an expression, you can do like an addition problem in there. You can do whatever you want to in there, and it'll treat it like as code. You just put the $sign in the brackets, and then you throw your stuff in there, and it'll process that as it prints out. Yeah. And then I'm going to show in the live coding the difference, because somebody said, if I print out the variable, like matrix will be my variable in a little bit. If I print out the variable, it looks different than whenever I put it in the template literals. So I will show an example of that and then briefly talk about why. That was a lot about strings. I'm going to go kind of faster arrays so we get to live coding. Arrays, they're indexed collections. In JavaScript, you can do any data type, and you can throw them all in the same array, and it doesn't really matter. More structured languages like Java, if I make an array, I have to do it with the same data type. But JavaScript, you can throw strings with numbers, with whatever booleans. Since array isn't a collection, just like with the strings, they come with special methods. So I listed all of those. I'm not going to read them out to you, but hopefully you've had a lot of time to, in the exercises, I actually liked the array exercises because I thought they were fun. You could sit there and play with them and do all of these. And I was joking with somebody today. Every single time I get something new, I try to figure out how many times I can break it and make it wrong so that I know all the things it cannot do, that then forces me to know what it can do. I think some people in Discord have also said that as well, but that is my approach. I just do everything to break it before I actually do it the right way. Another key problem with arrays that people have is they do have to be separated by a comma. So if you have a string, you can't have quotes and then some commas in there and then quotes at the end. You actually have to do quotes, your string, end quote, and then your comma has to be outside of your quotations, or it will not pick up that it's a separate item in the array. The cool thing about arrays, they are mutable. So a lot, not all, but a lot of their methods change the array for you. So you don't have to resave it every time. It just does it, that saves it for you. And then you do need to know enough about two-dimensional arrays to talk about them now. Whenever our next lesson, which I'm kind of excited that some of you started looking at the loops, the for and while loops. Whenever we get into for loops, we'll definitely be doing more with this two-dimensional array stuff because it's hard to access every element unless if you put it into a loop. So we'll talk about loops with arrays next time. I copied and pasted from the book. I didn't put all of them in here, but I did want to highlight. This one right here says returns. So this one does not modify your array. This says checks. Check is like asking a question that still does not modify your array. But all of these ones, when it says removes, it is actually changing your array. So whenever you start looking at documentation and it says things like removes and not returns, it's actually modifying your array. Adds, that is actually putting it into your array. You don't have to resave it. It is doing all of that in one step. Removes, adds, removes, or replaces, adds, like all of those modify your array And I'm hoping you can start seeing the wording and the descriptions are helping tell what it does. Right. Method chaining. That's what a lot of people were asking about. So I have this example here, and I'm going to do some live coding stuff here too as well. But this one I know it looks really weird on the screen, but I'm going to walk through it. So let's say the top 2 lines are my code. The rest of it is what it's kind of doing. So the first line says, let this example word variable equal hello world. And then I'm saying let result equal. So I'm going to save my result to be example world dot split dot reverse dot join dot to uppercase. So we're chaining all these things together. So what is actually happening? Well, the first thing it's doing is it's saying, what is this example word you're talking about? And what it did was it went into the memory and it said, oh, that's hello world. Okay, so now that I know that it's hello world, now I'm going to split it. And when I don't put any space in between here, that means it's splitting it on every character. So what it did was split, made an array. I know it's an array because of these brackets. Brackets instantly mean array. So now I have this array of every single one of these characters split. So I split it, and that's 5, 10. There's 11 elements inside this array, all individual elements of characters. So that's what the split did. The reverse, now I take this thing and I say, now I want to reverse it. So reverse means to take all of the elements in an array and reverse them. So that's what it did right here. It went backwards, HELLO space WORLD. So it reversed it. And then on the next line, it says, okay, let's join. So, and then because I didn't put anything in the join, it's going to join all of it together. So it joined all of these array elements into a string. And then I said, okay, take this string and make it uppercase. And we finally end up with this. And so my result is going to be that thing right there. It is doing this because I'm chaining this. It is doing all of this and what I would consider that like working memory part, where it's not saving any of this to anything. It just goes through. The processor has been told, do this, then this, then this, then this. And at the end of the process, I said, go ahead and save that to the variable result. So I had a question about like initialization. I don't need to initialize, especially because result's not going to be an array. The result's going to be a string. So a lot of this stuff, syntax stuff that you've been doing when you do it line by line, this method chaining just does it all together. I know. The other thing that's hard to explain here without typing it, each of these matter what method they come from. For instance, the data type. That is the biggest thing that you need to look at. Example world, I'm just going to walk through this, talk through it. Example world is a string. So I'm going to put a big S here for string. The split method has to be on a string. You can't do a split method on an array. It doesn't work like this whenever you do it on an array. So this string, it goes through the string library and it says, okay, I want to split a string, but the output of this, if you looked at the documentation, would be an array. Same thing with the reverse. So now I have an array. This reverse function has to be on an array, and that's fine because it is an array. But the reverse function returns an array, so and that's why this is still an array. It has the bracket. The join is the way to change an array into a string. So I gave it an array, that's what it's hooked up to, but then what it printed or what it returned afterwards is a string. And the 2 uppercase, I can't do that on an array. I have to do it on the string, but I gave it a string. So some of you that were asking, why is it erroring out or doing these weird things? One of the possibilities is when you do method chaining, if you are changing from a string to an array or back and forth, you do have to be careful on which data type at that given time during the chain your variable or what it's working with it actually is. Okay. So that's the end of the formal lecture because I wanted to give myself plenty of time for live coding and get you out in studio. So we've talked about common string methods and array methods. We talked about creating, actually we didn't talk too much about creating arrays, but we will in live coding. Accessing, being able to use the brackets, and then modifying by using those methods. And then we're going to convert strings and methods. That's what I mainly wanted to focus on as more of a formal lecture, is going back and forth with that split, the split and join. And then the biggest thing you need to know is mutable versus immutable. So I'm going to re-go over expectations. I usually have this after the live coding, but sometimes I forget about it. So I just want this on the top part of your brain. Remember, you will get the attendance code during studio, and you need to do the studio before signing off. Now, if you're like, I have plenty of time, I can whatever, that's up to you. But if you are stressed about doing exercises studio and graded assignments, studio should be the least of your worries. But that also means that during 7, of course, Central Time, 7 to 8:30, you should only be focusing on studio. We are dedicating that time for you to focus on that, but then be able to just turn it in and be done. So please work on the studio during studio time, but then get it finished. And then you do have some reading and exercises before next class. And like Jamarco said at the beginning, due on Monday is part 2. And you need to start getting very structured with yourself and having those expectations that you need to turn it in on Monday. And then if there's any problems, you need to communicate, but really focus on getting that part 2 on Monday, because that will then set you up for success to turn in part 3 when the full thing's done. So I think part 2 is the first 10 tests, and then the part 3 is all of them. I think there's 17 maybe. So if you want to go ahead a little bit and go ahead and finish out the whole thing, you can always work ahead, but definitely get the part 2 done by Monday. So now we're going to do some live coding. All right. Is this big enough font for you guys? Can you see it okay? The blurry might be just because it's kicking up, but I can make it bigger. Yes, I can make it bigger. Hold on. But I can probably only make it, oh, that was not bigger. With me keeping my space, though, is this okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. So you're going to see some examples from the book, most of the examples I came up with, some of them I got inspired by the book. And so don't worry that you see that this is string characters together part 3. I kind of cleared it out and did my own thing. So this is not the exercises. This is me I went through the exercises and started creating my own stuff here. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to comment out everything. So that it doesn't affect me. Okay, so I'm going to just do one section at a time. Right here. I can probably make this bigger because I don't have a lot of stuff on this. There we go. So on this, we're going to have the sample string. It says Java is better. The sample string 2 lowercase. Everybody knows what that kind of does. But whenever we print out the console log, node, which file am I in? There we go. If you notice, whenever I printed this out, the Java is better is not lowercase. So I just want to re-go over how important this is to understand. Sometimes when you do methods, they do not change your original thing. But if I wanted to go ahead and print this out, It does make everything lowercase. It did not change the variable though. I'm just printing out what's in like that working memory state. Like before it throws it away from memory, it takes a snapshot of it, prints it, and then it throws it away. So sample string stays forever, which is this original one, but the two lowercase get kind of washed out. Just want to re-go over that. I put too many commas here. So to directly look at an array the same way, because this is an array.sort, this does change the array. It actually sorts this. Now, somebody asked me, what are some common ways to figure out, common mistakes in my code? As you can see, hopefully see, there's like a red squiggly right here. That means that there's a problem. The good news about VS Code, I want to say 75 to 80% of the time, it will tell you the right error, which if I look here, it says a comma is expected. So if I look through here, I have a comma between these two. I need to put a comma in between those two, and now this red squiggly goes away. The other place in VS Code to look for red squigglies, because it's sometimes hard to see, if you look right here where the terminal, debug, output, if you see problems, if there are any problems, I would look at those. This means that you actually need to look at these, and it'll tell me the same thing. It says on line 15, so line 15 right here, on column 36, so if I counted from here and said 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, this would be somewhere around 36, that they're expecting a comma. So check the problems. If you see any problems, you need to look at those before you try to run your code. Right. Now that I have this, you guys can see this, then I'm going to go ahead and just run this. And as you see, it does sort this, kinda. I didn't know that 47 was after 350, but it changed it. And my numbers are first, and then my letters are after. So the biggest question, why is it doing this? And it does it character by character. So the 2 on the 23 is actually smaller than the 3 on the 350. So this does it character by character if you just do the generic sort. So I think that should make sense because 4 is after 3, character by character. So it takes the first character. And then if you look up the ASCII code, I think capital letters actually come before lowercase letters in that ASCII table. So when it converts it to an ASCII number, the capital letters actually come before the lowercase. So if I made this one uppercase, it'll actually switch it before that one because they're both uppercase, and then it does it in alphabetical order. So just know when you use the sort, alphabet, like uppercase and lowercase matter. But sometimes they'll put everything to lowercase or make sure all the numbers are a certain way. Sorry, I forgot how big this thing is. I'm going to do these side by side. Okay, so these are a bunch of very, very short examples of what we can do. So this is the exact one that I did before. I did the split, reverse, join, 2 uppercase. This is the one that I walked through during the lecture. I just wanted to show you that I wasn't making this up, that this does actually work. I do need to print it out. That would help. That was another mistake. I don't know if somebody saw that. They're like, it's supposed to be showing me. And then it doesn't show unless if you tell it to show by doing this console log. So even though you're doing all the right logic and all the great programming, if you miss just one little step, sometimes it throws it out there. So again, this is the hello world backwards all uppercase that I was showing during the lecture, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. The thing I do want to show you real quick on VS Code, if I hover over some of these things, so if I hover over example world, do you see how it tells me that it's a string? Those are helpful for whenever I'm programming, because sometimes I'm going too fast, or what LaunchCode's good at, and you will absolutely use in the real world. Most of the time, you are not writing code fresh. If you join a team, they already have their code base set up. They don't need you to make some new program. They need you to modify what they have. So if I'm looking at this example for the first time and I've never seen the code, the things that I do to evaluate what's going on is I just hover over things and I see that's a string. It's confirming in my mind what I think it should be. So if I don't think it's supposed to be a string, then I know something's wrong with what I'm assuming. What I like about this is as we're doing the chaining, this is a string. So if I hover over the split, if you look, it says string.split. If this said array, then it's not the right thing because I'm dealing with a string. So this, if it says string.split, that means the thing that it's attached to has to be a string. These are the parameters that you could put in it. So I could put in some like expression or string or number or whatever thing. Those are what I can throw in it. Then this at the end is what is returned, and that's the type. So it does deal with strings, but those brackets mean that what's returning is actually a string array. So this, remember when we wrote out, it actually turned hello world from a string into an HELLO space WORLD because it split that out into an 11 element array that was a string array. That's what split did. So now I have a string array, and then this says you should be taking an array that is made up of strings, and you can reverse it, and I cannot put any parameter in reverse. So if I put a 0 in there, it wouldn't like it. If I threw a blank space in there, it would not like it. It does not want anything in there. And then again, it's taking an array that has strings in it. It reverses the elements in the array. So this gives you a description of what it does. And then the thing that some people overlook is it tells you what's getting out of it. So an array that's a string is coming in, and you are getting a string array to return. The join, I need an array string to join. Here's the parameters I can throw in. But at the end, it is not returning an array. It is returning a string now. And then the two uppercase, it takes a string as an input, as a thing that it's doing it to. It does the uppercase, and it returns a string. So VS Code has most of these methods built in. So some of you that were going to W3 schools and all that kind of stuff, those are great hints. I just want to show you how I do it, which is a little bit quicker, because that's why I'm so quick at some of this stuff, because I just know where the things are at. Let's see what this does. I wrote this a couple days ago. This says that I'm going to do, I was going to go part by part. And so I want to show you this just so you can see it. But I'm not going to go part by part. I have other things I'd rather show you. But part one of example world.split is this. Remember the backtick, clear to the backtick. So it's going to print this out just like this is. And I put in some fancy variables like part one. Well, part one is the split of it. It is of type, and I do type. And so I'm gonna show you this. Let's see if you can see both of these at the same time. So it says here that part one, the text, colon right here. So the part one, the variable, is this thing right here. Do you notice how it does not have the brackets around it? If I printed out part one in a console log, the brackets would be there to show that it's an array. But whenever you put an array in a template literal, it actually calls a toString method, which I will hopefully be able to show you here in a second. And that's why it looks different, because it actually calls the array toString, because it knows that it's going to turn it into a string. Is of type. Whenever you do types, I strongly suggest in your debugging to use this type of and see what types you're dealing with. The problem with arrays is it's going to say that it's an object. Well, that doesn't help you at all. So then you have to potentially ask it different questions, such as, is it an array? And this is a method that asks, is it an array? And it's going to return true or false. And it says true, that part one is an array. And it says, what type are the elements? So I said, take part one and take the first element of part one. So that would technically be the H, and say, what type is that H? And it says that it's a string. So hopefully, I was going to go through part 2 and part 3 and show you that it does change it from array to a string and back and forth. But I think I have other examples that would be more beneficial. Let me comment those out. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down, so you're going to lose where my variable is, but just remember, example word is hello world in all of these. So on this one, I'm going to take my thing, I'm going to replace any O with X, and that's a separate command. And then after I do that, I'm going to call this repeat function 3 times. So as we go through these minor ones, what I want you guys to do is mentally picture what's going on and what you think should be the output whenever I print this result. So hopefully I'm going to print the original one, which is hello world. And then, actually, I'm not, hold on. I'm going to print out hello world there. And then I'm going to print out the result of whatever this does. So it's going to replace all the O's with X's, and then it's going to repeat 3 times. So let's see what that does. See if your mental model matches that. So it changes the O's. Oh, it only changed 1 O. The other O, it didn't change. So let's figure out why that is. If I go to replace and I hover over it, it says that replace says, hey, find the search string, and then do the replace value. So I said the search value is O. It's going to search for O, and then it's going to replace it with X. Oh, hold on. A string containing the text to replace when the search value, all matches are replaced if the G flag is set. Or only those matches at the beginning if the Y flag is present. Otherwise, only the first match is replaced. So looking through documentation, I know that it's super boring sometimes to look through this documentation. You saw how slow it was for me, and I actually know what this is doing. It does take time to read through documentation, but I'm finding my answer. I just highlighted it, why only the first O got replaced and not all of it. So definitely read the documentation. And then it repeated itself 3 times. So I think that one's, besides the O not changing the second one, I thought that did exactly what I was thinking it was going to do. Let's do this one real quick. Again, you don't need to type these up. I'm just going to do mental things. This is a substring from 0 to 5. And then I'm going to concatenate space is cool at the end. And then I'm going to log the results. So I'm thinking substring that takes just a start number and an end number, and it just takes that. So from the 0 to 5, the most common mistake is, and even I have to kind of think about it because I taught too much block programming where it actually included the last one. But most programming languages start at the first one, go to the last one, but they do not include the last one. So let's see what that should do. So hello world was the original one, and it says hello is cool. And that's because it took 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, but it didn't take the 5. Let's make this more obvious. So let's do 2. Rerun this. Key is cool because it does 1, 2, or 0, 1, right? It does 0, element 1, but it does not do index 2. So that's something to remind yourself that it does not include that last index. It goes up to it, but it does not include it. I don't know if this one was in the book. I did throw some in here that are not in the book just to show you how I kind of think through things. Yeah, I purposely did not do 0 through 4. So the includes world. Remember this looking symbol. This was weird. Again, the book didn't have this. This is that ternary operator that I was talking about. That this right here includes is going to return a Boolean, a true or false. And so if I can use a true or false, then I can use this ternary operator to do some other logic for me. So if it's true, it's going to say found. If it's false, it's going to do not found. Again, you don't have to memorize these things. You can Google those, meaning Google what ternary operator. And to be honest, for most of this course, you don't even need to use it. But I like it, and I see it often on these one-liners like this. I see them often in the real world. So you do need to at least understand what they do. So I'm going to run this real quick. And it prints found. So result equals, well, this was true, so it said found. And if I said, does it do that? It would say not found, because that is not included in example world. And again, I don't know if it really did included. Just like this thing here, I'm going to do some other fancy ones. I'm going to go a little faster because they're not as important. This one, so this one's weird because earlier I was using example world. I was using a variable, but what's cool is you don't have to, because remember that variable transfers into a string. And so I can just use a string instead of the variable. And then trim, remember we get rid of all the white space at the beginning and end, not in the middle. And then this pad start, if I hover over this, it says pads the current string with the given string, possibly repeated, so that the resulting string reaches the given length. The padding is applied from the start. So this is saying that it's going to turn whatever this into a 10-character thing. And again, this is not one that I've ever used before, but I thought it was fun to play with. So on this one, the result was this last one. Hold on. Let me comment this one out. I want to do the other one first. This one's my fun one. It actually padded, if you count how many characters are there, there's 10 characters there. And what it did was it padded the start with this. But there were spaces there. But remember, I trimmed out the spaces. So that's where, when we're talking about should we use chaining, should we not, this is an example where it's starting to get a little complex if I was just reading this on what it was really trying to do. So it really depends on if you come back to this 2 days from now, 2 weeks from now, would you be able to look at this and at least understand in a few seconds what's going on? Or would this be better if I trimmed it out first and then did the padding to make it seem more structured? So the chaining, you don't have to do. There's also these other ones. So I'll do this one. There's a string, which just means string, like generically it's calling from the library. What it's trying to do is it's saying from char code A, start at 0, which is just A. It's going to add 1 to this char code and then print the result. If you add 1 to A, you actually get B. Imagine that. If I added 2, I get C. So just different things. And then this one, you guys are going to like the printout of this. So it says, take this string, you're going to match. It's all the boundaries, something. And then this is that / global, that /G is / global. This is called regex. I'm not real good with this. I have to Google it every time. But there's some people that like doing this because in JavaScript, you care about how things are formatted. But what this does is it grabs all the boundaries and it grabs the first letter. So the S from strawberry, the O from orange, and the B for banana. It joins them together with a dash. Again, none of those do you have to remember. All right, let's go to the matrix thing that I was talking about. If I printed out, another common question is, with this matrix, I could have made this variable all on one line. I didn't, because visibly, this is a two-dimensional array. My big array, and then my rows. So I have 3 arrays inside of an array. When I log just the matrix, this is another one of those things. Do you see how I had a problem here? I should have been paying more attention here. And there's like, it kind of looks red, but I was like, well, maybe that's because of the backtick. When I do here, it says unterminated. So I did not end my template literal. So I need to put a backtick right there. Another way to figure out what it is, if you read the error message on this one, unexpected end of input. Well, that's a weird error. I like these problems first. I like solving my problems first before I get unsolicited advice from the machine down there. I'm going to read you that. Again, sorry, my mouse, my scrolly mouse is very sensitive. So if you look here, whenever I printed out the matrix, it printed it all on one line with the appropriate array. But whenever I did it this way, it printed it out as a series of elements, just printed them out right in a row. I'm going to actually show you the documentation for that here in a second. But I wanted to confirm with people that it does do different things, because some people were confused why I didn't think these would do different things. Last one on this one, and then we're going to go to some more fancier ones. Oh, this was that original thing. Remember I said JavaScript, and I said, we're just going to print this off. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but JavaScript, if I split it, it's going to split it at the space. So it has 2 elements. It has the Java, and then it has the script. And I printed out the 0th one, which is Java. If I do the first one, it'll print out script. Word length -2. Remember, it takes this word, it goes backwards 2. So that's the P again. If I just say, hey, how long is the word? It'll tell me that it's 11 digits, the 4, and then the 6, and then the space, so that's 11. And then if I actually go to the 11 index spot, it gives me this undefined, because remember, if it's 11 spot, if there's 11 characters, the index starts at 0, so the largest one I can have is 10. So I always have to take 1 off that length to print that. This was the time where I was going to go to, somebody suggested this. I'll make this a little bit bigger. This WDN, this is your Mozilla developer web docs. I do like this one for JavaScript and what we're doing, just a little bit better than the W3 schools. But what you can do here is you can actually search for array. So standard built-in objects, there's a ton of them. I went to array, and these are all the methods right here that I can do to an array. So I'll actually show you one here in a second on a live on my other screen that I did that's definitely not in the book. That's kind of weird. But these are all the different ones. And let's say that I want to do pop. When I click here, it says the pop method of array removes the last element. Removes. Do you see how it doesn't say it returns? It actually removes the last element from the array. It does return something, whether we use it or not. It doesn't, we don't have to, but it does return that element. So you can hit here and hit run, and it says, you have broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, and tomato. I don't think I have a single one of those at my house right now. So, and then if I do plants.pop, there's two things that actually happen. It pops the tomato off the list. So if I print plants, like I do here, there's no more tomato in there because the pop actually removed it. But at the same time that it removed it, because oftentimes we do want to know what that thing is that it's removing, it returns tomato. So I could have so I'm going to actually pop the tomato off right here, but I'm going to actually save it as a popped item. And then I'm going to print out this, which it should do the same exact thing. So I just hit run again. So it allows you to save that because it returns it. You can grab it. Or I don't have to grab it. Just depends on what you want to do. There's multiple things you can do here. Yeah, that's the reason I do like this one. W3 Schools also allows you to run it, but that's the thing I don't like. They make you run it in like a Java browser or JavaScript browser, HTML, something or other, and it looks weird. This one looks much better. Once I found out that you can just run it right here and it looks just like VS Code more or less, I was sold on this one. So definitely check this out. And then the other thing that the array, the toString, that's what I was going to show you. When you do the template literal, there's a method called toString right here. This method, if I just said print my array, it prints my array and it shows the brackets. Whenever I put the print array in the template literal, it actually calls this method on that array. And if you look here, if I call toString, you can actually see that it makes it a string. It just puts a comma in between all the elements. So that's why this one is the one that gets ran whenever the template literal. And then the other thing, you can do standard built-in object, and these are all the standard built-in objects you can do. So like Boolean, there's a couple things that you could do. I again have not taught the JavaScript part of this course before, so I don't know at the end what we get to, but in the real world, errors are a huge thing, so you want to be able to deal with those. And then JSONs are a huge thing. So there's a lot of cool things. And then I was going to show you strings are also here. So any of those methods that we were talking about with strings are right here. There's a ton of them. And then I usually get asked the question, what's the trash can? The trash can stands for it's deprecated, meaning they don't use it anymore. So for instance, your string font size, we do that through CSS anymore on a website. We're not going to do that through this, through JavaScript. We have other methods on how to increase or decrease your font size or your font color or all those properties of your font. So I might come back to this if I have time at the end, but I was going to go to my other one here. What I'm doing now, I'm switching my terminal to be in the right path. Right. So I'm in the right path because I'm in the arrays exercises, part 6 arrays. So I'm in the arrays exercises, and then I would run the node part 6 exercise arrays. So that's what I'm going to run. Let me just look through here real quick. I'm going to comment out a lot of these. So sorry, I'm going to make my screen a little bit more friendly for me, but not for you guys for a second. Actually, I'll just do the same thing I did last time. I'll just comment it all out. There we go. All right, now I'm going to put it back. Right. I got this off of, I think, one of the exercises where you took this cargo and then you had to sort it. The problem is you can't take a cargo that is a string. Remember, if I hover over this, it tells me right here, this is a string. And so if I go back to string and I say, can I split not split. Can I sort a string if I go here? Because what I want to do is I want to sort my list. But since it's a string, I go over to my string and there's no sort option for strings. So I actually have to change it to an array. And so that's where we're going to do the split. And so every comma, unlike my hello world where I did it for every character, I'm actually saying don't do it for every character, do it for everything in between the commas. Every comma, split it and make it into an array. So this thing here, if I hover over thing, it's going to make a string array. And then I'm going to go to sort. It's going to sort my string array. And then I want to print it back. So I'm going to do join. And the join is going to bring it back to a string. So hopefully you've done this exercise. I'm going to run this. And instead of it being water, spacesuits, etc., it sorts this. So it's batteries, food, plasma sword, spacesuits, and water. Here's the fun part. Let's say that we added something to our cargo hold, and we wanted to throw it in here because I'm crazy. I like to break things. So I'm going to take this splice, and at element 3, I'm not going to delete anything, but I'm going to throw in another thing that we have. We have some keys. So I'm going to take this, and I'm just going to change it in here. Now, the question is where can I put it in here? And unfortunately, I cannot put it in here because splice has to happen on an array, and cargo hold right here is not an array. But after I split it, it is an array. So I can put it right here. Put it right there. And then it'll sort it, and then I can join it. But it returned nothing. I don't see any errors. I look at my problems, there's nothing there. So it's not a syntax error, because it would tell me in my problems that there's a syntax error. It's not a runtime error because I ran it and there's no errors here. So that means it's a logic error. That means I logically did something wrong. So then I'm thinking, okay, so what do I need to do? Well, it was working without this splice. So let me look at what it says here. It says it removes elements from an array and, if necessary, insert new elements into their place. I say, where do I want to start at? 0-based location. So it goes to the 3rd location. Remember, at this point, it is an array. That's not the problem. That one's not the issue. That would be something that I would look into, but I know that it's not. So this is element 0, element 1, element 2, element 3. So it should be putting it somewhere right here. Delete the number of elements to remove. I said 0. I don't want to delete any. And then it says elements to insert, and that's my keys. What's going on here? The problem is right here. What is it actually returning? This returns an array. I want an array. I want an array with everything. But this is returning an array containing the elements that were deleted. How many things did I delete? I deleted nothing. So at this point, once it runs this splice, it's actually returning a blank array because it's returning what's deleted. That's why this is a logic error, because I'm not using it the way that it's supposed to do. So my logic compared to what the computer's logic is different. So it's a logic error. So then, because I'm like, I still want to do this because this is a one-liner that's super cool. That's like 4 different things all in a row. I need to find a way how to do this. So then I went to my handy dandy chart here again, and I went to array, and I was like, hey, I can make this slightly bigger. So I went off to the right or the left here, and I said slice, and it confirmed to me that it returns a new array containing the extracted elements of the deleted elements. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what the other one said. So are there anything else in here? And then I saw this to splice. Well, what does that do? Instances is the copying version of the splice. So what that means, it does not actually modify. The spliced one modifies the array and returns the deleted one. This thing here does not modify my array because it doesn't say that it adds or deletes. On the other hand, it returns a new array with those elements that I changed. So if I removed or if I replaced or if I added, this one's gonna return a new array, which is the array that I want with the new thing. So I'm gonna use this one instead, to splice. And unfortunately, I don't think VS Code likes this to splice. I never got this one to actually show all those things. Maybe if I waited long enough and the libraries got to catch up with me. On the other hand, that's why you go to other documentation like this. And then when I run this, it adds in the keys and it is sorted, just like what I wanted. Now, if we were actually timing when I did that, that took me already doing all the research, already being in JavaScript, a solid 5 minutes. What would I expect from you guys for this? Probably 30 minutes, maybe even an hour to do exactly what I did here. So just know that whenever I'm going through this, I already have a lot of knowledge and I've already done these exercises ahead of time. So I'm prepped and prepared. But for you guys, it is very common for when you guys are working on something like this to spend 30 minutes to an hour, which is another reason on your graded assignment. I don't know how many times I can plug this. On your graded assignment, do not wait to the last minute because you will come across errors just like this, where you're like, I want it to do this, and it looks like it should be good. And your logic, your rationale is perfect, but you need to find the right things that the computer does that also match with what you're doing. And sometimes it's just slightly different. So make sure that you guys give yourself plenty of time. Here we go. I think I'm perfect on time. I am going to take all the way till 7. This was part of the assignment, so I'm going to show this. You guys were able to print an array with these things in it because you added and you pushed them. Something that I want to show, do you have to initialize a blank array to then push? And the answer is no. How do I know that? Because I like to play with things and I'm going to push that in there and I'm going to comment that thing out and I'm going to rerun it. And look, it looks exactly the same. So if you know what's going inside your array, you can just build your array right off the bat. You don't have to push it afterwards. On the other hand, do I have to push all the elements all at once? And that's a no. I can just push them individually if I want to. I can do 1 and then 2. Does not matter how I do this. There's an error. You see how there's a problem? So if I click on my problem, it says identifier expected. So I did my table, but I forgot my push. So always look at these problems. This is also because I'm going very fast. It looks the same. So it doesn't matter if you push 1 element at a time, if you push 2, if you do it at the beginning, as long as it gets done. So I don't think anybody had a question over that. I did want to go over just the printing of some of this. I think this still matches with what they were asking you to do. So if I print table 1, I'm going to look it down here. This row is 0. This row is 1. So on my line 27, it's actually going to print the whole entire row because element 1, which is technically the second element in my array, is that whole entire row. But then if I said print 1, 1, it would say, oh, I want at index 1, which is here, and then this is index 0, this is index 1, so it's going to print HE, and et cetera with these other ones. So I'm just going to let it run to show you that it does. Table 1. Oh, show me the table. All right. So here's my table, which is my 2D array. If I just do a 1-level element, it's going to print out the whole thing. But when I go inside that one, this is 0, 1, so it prints the HE. These other ones I think I just grabbed from the book, so I'm not going to do that. what most people were questioning about, which I see a comment now that I'm looking at it. I'm gonna comment this out so you don't see that printed out anymore. 3D. Everybody loves 3D. If 2D is fine, 3D must be better. And then, has anybody went to a 4D movie yet? Those are crazy. Yeah, they're crazy. I think I saw whatever that shark one was. Is it Meg 2 or something? I think that's the one I went to semi recently. That the moving chairs and the air spurts and whatever else. Anyway, 3D. What I did, because I have no creativity in me, I just went off the same exact topic that was above, which were the elements, and I said, oh, how can I potentially separate elements and categories? And I don't know if this is right, so for any of you science people or science teachers out there, forgive me, but I'm pretty sure that these two are gases, these two are metals, and I don't know what these are called, but they're not gases and not metals, so whatever that is. So that's how I categorized them. But remember, we already had 2 dimensions. So remember, the yellow is an array, and then I have an array of gas elements. I have an array of metal, an array of whatever other. And then inside those, I have other arrays. Now, the biggest reason why you'll see, this is the last time I'm going to show 3-dimensional arrays, and that's because you never use them in the real world. This right here is so complicated, we do not use them. 2-dimensional arrays you will see all over the place. 3 dimensions you don't. So you're going to see a sneak peek into how I would do the same exact thing, not using 3D arrays, here in a second. But hopefully this right here shows you that. And then I'm just going to print out some random stuff. I don't think I print out this so you can see it all in the console. So let me do that for a second. Right, let's see if this does what I want it to. Right. So this is my first array that has 2 arrays, my second array. And so I said it does not print out exactly what I want. I'm going to show you. This one did 0, 0, 0. So 0 would be this row. 0 would be this element inside that row. And then 0 would be the first thing inside this array. And then I did 1, 1, 0. So 1, this is row 0. This is row 1. So that's my row that I'm talking about. The second level is 1. This is 0. This is 1. So it's doing this one. And then I said 0, which should be the 29. Let's see if I'm right. Yep, 29. And then the other. So on this one, I said 2, 0, 3. So 2. So this is 0, 1, 2. So I'm talking about this row. That's what the first number is. The 0 is this element here. And then it's the index of 3, which is 0, 1, 2, 3. Hopefully you guys don't have elementary kids at home and you start telling them, hey, you need to count and your first number is 0 all the time, but that's how computers work. So hopefully when you're in class, you actually start counting starting with 0. So 3D array, generically, hopefully I explained that. All right. I'm going to comment this stuff out again and show you some fancy stuff. So, advanced stuff. If you are overwhelmed with the course, you're just going to sit with your hands in your lap or behind your head or behind your back or somewhere. You're not going to touch anything. You're just going to let this flow over you, and you're not going to worry about it after this. But for those of you that are like, I'm begging for something more advanced, we will get to this eventually. But I'm going to show you why in the real world, we do not do 3D arrays. Okay. When we do things in the real world, because the element has a name, a mass, a symbol, a table number, and a type. Because remember I said, if the types are wrong, whatever, you guys are getting my drift here. So we have all these things. What I can do is I can categorize that and actually make it an object. And there are, I think in JavaScript, there's actually a couple ways to make object. This is the way that I like the best. It's depending on LaunchCode. I haven't read that far ahead. Whatever they do, I'll show you that whenever that happens. But this is my favorite way. What I'm saying is an element consists of a name, mass, symbol, table number, and type. And then, and again, this is how I set them equal to that element. We have not went over that, so I'm not actually going to go over that. We will go over functions and how to set properties later. So I will go over the details of that. But I think by glance, you can see I've created an element and said an element should have these things. And then what I did was I said hydrogen. I'm going to make a new element that has hydrogen of these properties that match at the same exact time. So hydrogen is the name, the mass is this, the symbol is this, the table number is this, and the type is gas. I'm just stealing the ones from above. So again, unless if you're geeking out on science, I don't know if you need to memorize all of those. But I made them variables now. So I have just right now abstracted one of those layers away. And this is how we do it. We abstract those layers so that we don't have to think 3 levels deep. I think about an element as an element. I don't think of it as an element inside of an array, inside of another array, and then I have to figure out, well, why are they broken up into these different things? I'm just going to make my own type, assign my things. We're going to do for loops. So this is a preview of for loops. I'm going to say, this is just to print out things. This is not setting anything, but I'm going to look at hydrogen and I'm going to print out all the properties of hydrogen right here. And this is going to loop through hydrogen and show that. Then I'm going to put all the elements in the array. And then I'm going to filter out all the gas elements. We will go over filter. We'll go over what this notation here is. We will go over all of this later. These are advanced things. Hopefully I explained this well enough. I'm throwing in elements. At first, I'm just printing out all the properties of hydrogen, and then I'm putting them all into an array, and then it's going to filter all the gas ones out and tell me them. Does it? I don't think it prints it. We're going to use that temperate literal because it does cool things, right? We'll see what this does. I haven't actually tried to print it out like that, but we'll see. Oh, there we go. So remember, I did the hydrogen. So all of this stuff right here is coming from this for loop. I'm looping through every single hydrogen property and printing it out. So the name is hydrogen, the mass is this, the symbol is this. And down here, because we are talking about objects, remember when I said the array thing, the array object has a .toString method that then shows how it wants things printed out. I would have to create a toString method for this element for it to be able to use this system here. So I don't have a toString array, a toString method for my element object. So it's just going to say object because it doesn't know how to handle it. On the other hand, some other debugging tools that I definitely want to make sure you guys have in your pocket. Let's say that I do want to see what's inside here. If I set a breakpoint right here, I'm going to show this every single class until people start using it. And then I go up to the top and hit run and start with debugging. So that's that F5. It's going to stop right there where I set that breakpoint. And what's cool is over on the left, you guys have me on my screen way too big. Okay. at this line, my gas elements array is undefined because I have not set anything yet. This is the line that I'm going to set things on. And if I hit the next button, it now sets the element array, the gas element array. And if you look here, it actually sets both of them. It knows that they're elements and it knows all of their properties. And it says there's a length of 2. So this debugging tool eventually will become a very, very useful tool whenever you're going line by line. Is this line with the variables what I expect it to be, or is it not? And you just go line by line. All right. I told you we'd be off by 7. We got about 3.5 minutes. I'm going to look at the thing. Actually, I'm going to turn off the recording now, and then I'm going to look at some stuff. So where is the...